intense focus on their success and his ability to deep dive into complex issues to solve problems. He is Vice President of Operations at C2, and he leverages his decades of experiences, work reporting on and learning strong business practices to coordinate C2's resources and support operations of the offices in Louisville, Lexington, and Indianapolis. Ed serves as communications leader for major projects in both business and government and transportation divisions. Also, we have HB Elkins. So HB, I didn't realize have 18 years, right? I knew HB was one of our tenured public information officers with the district. He's been with District 10 since October of 2004. During that time, the way government agencies communicate with the public has changed drastically. Amen to that. In the past years, he had relied on local news media. Now, of course, the emphasis on social media and innovative ways that we can communicate. Like I said, that communication landscape drastically changes, and HB is one of them that I think kind of leads the way in implementing those changes. He's drawn praise from Federal Highways for those innovations methods with social media that's been deployed in rural highway districts. Prior to joining KYTC, he was Executive Director of Community Anti-Drug Coalition affiliated with Operation Unite and Kentucky Agency for Substance Abuse Prevention. He also worked in Public Information Office at the Department of Revenue and Personnel Cabinets. So I will go ahead and turn it over. I didn't ask you which one's going first. Okay, all right, HB, please come on up.
The pressure is on us because we are the last session before lunch and we are repeating it the last session of the day. So everybody's going to be in a hurry to get out of here. So we'll try to accommodate you there. And there's a little irony in this. This presentation was scheduled and we'd already started the work on it based on the 2021 flooding that we had in the Upper Kentucky River Valley. And then we had that catastrophic flooding at the end of July that added a whole new chapter to this. So we've been able to add that on. Make sure this thing works. There we go. Technology is not always our friend. We're going to talk about this project in Jackson, in Breathitt County. It's just down the road from the district office. Obviously, if you have a dam that carries a high traffic highway across it, there's a lot of regional and community interest. We're going to talk about some of the ways that we tried to do public outreach during the crisis and in our response to it and the planning for a repair. And hopefully you'll be able to pick up something on how to respond to a crisis like this. Patty's already introduced us. I'm HB, he's Ed. I'm going to go first, and then Ed's going to pick up, talk about C2's involvement in this. We had to enlist them when we got to do two things at once here, click the slide and everything. We're talking about Panbowl Lake, and I thought this was interesting. My wife found an old picture in a thrift shop up in Ohio several years ago, and then she looked at it and saw that it was the Panbowl in Jackson. So she bought the picture and it's been in my office ever since, and had no way of knowing that this was going to become such a big controversial thing. But the Panbowl, there was a huge bend in the North Fork of the Kentucky River, and it's like 7 miles around, and I think it was like 50 or 60 feet on either side. And you can see in this old picture, there was a railroad that ran across that. And that's all different now. Talking about the background of the flood, in February of 2021, we had a huge rainfall event. Jackson experienced significant rainfall, including in the Panbowl Lake watershed and the North Fork of the Kentucky River. And the other two forks of the Kentucky River also got a lot of water. Beattyville, my hometown, Main Street was inundated. There were only a couple of businesses that water did not get into. And Urban, the next town downstream in Estill County, where I've worked for years as a newspaper editor, it was completely cut off. There was no way to get in or out of Urban. And a strip mall built on a fill on the west side of Irving, those buildings were flooded. They were inundated. And I don't think anybody ever thought that that could happen. But it certainly did. It was bigger flood than we had in 1984 and 1978, which are two of the biggest ones that we've had since Buckhorn Dam was built on the middle fork of the Kentucky River back in the 1950s. Now, at this time, the flooding in Jackson did not reach the levels that it did in 1984. The February 2021 flood, it was the 10th highest flood ever recorded in Breathitt County, but there were quite a few things that caused the residents to be concerned about that. And like I said, we were preparing this presentation based on the response to the 2021 flooding. And then just a few weeks ago, we had an absolute, just total disaster in Breathitt and Perry counties, and then in Knott, Letcher, parts of Clay, parts of Pike County. On the night of July 27th, we had just devastating flash flooding. The river, North Fork of the Kentucky River, crested at 43 feet in Jackson, which was the highest crest ever recorded. It was more than 43 feet. Panbowl Lake didn't flood because that watershed didn't get as much rain as what happened back in February of 21. But we had issues back in the first flooding incident with water seeping through the embankment, through the dam, that caused a lot of concern because the lake was so high as it is because it had so much flooding. So we called in the Division of Water, since that is considered to be a dam, or we called in the Division of Water for their assistance and their advice. And they recommended that we close Kentucky 15 going through Jackson for about 36 hours. And if you're familiar with Southeastern Kentucky, you know that Kentucky 15 is the major north-south thoroughfare in that part of the state. Connects the Mountain Parkway at Campton, runs through Jackson and Hazard, down to Whitesburg to US 119, US 23. So it's a major corridor that links that part of Kentucky to the bluegrass section of the state. So you can imagine what closing that road did for commerce and people trying to get to do emergency response in the areas that have been hit by the flash flooding. Oh, I hit the wrong button. Here we go. And this will show kind of what we're dealing with Panbowl Lake. It's made up basically of three embankments. You've got the west embankment, which is the dam next to the cut through in the river. And then you've got the east embankment with a standpipe that drains the lake. And then the old outlet that's labeled on the chart there was actually the old riverbed before the cut through was done. And then there's a field, Washington Avenue, which is the access to downtown Jackson. And there's a flap gate there. 1957, the cut through project was built. You can see where the river bends there in that outlet. 1957, that was done as a flood control project. And then in 1963, Kentucky 15 was constructed, kind of at the same time that the Mountain Parkway was built. It was considered to be a southeastern leg of the Mountain Parkway. If you're familiar with the Mountain Parkway, it runs 4 lanes to Campton. And then up until recently, when they started all the construction, 2 lanes on to Sayersville and then on to Prestonsburg. And then Kentucky 15 is mostly 2 lanes from Campton through Jackson and Hazard to Whitesburg. But so that's been 4 lanes since then. This was the issue that we had in February of 2021 that caused so much concern. Because the Panbowl watershed got so much rainfall, the lake level got really high. And of course, the river was up and the current was flowing very fast there. And there was fear of the river overtopping the dam. The river crested on March 1st of 2021 at 39 feet. You know, it's 4 feet short of the record that we had this July. And the lake, about 736 feet above sea level. keep hitting the button when I don't mean to. We had a small, what we call a pop-out slide happen and water seeping from the river because it was so high and flowing so fast. And when you saw the water seeping through the dam, that caused the residents of the lakeside section of Jackson and the people that live in that watershed, it caused them a lot of concern, especially because the lake was so high because we'd had so much flooding. Emergency management personnel in Breathitt County ordered the evacuation of all the residents of the Lakeside Estates section of Jackson. The hospital is located in the lake watershed. It was evacuated. The local nursing home is located there. It was evacuated as well. We had help from the Division of Water monitoring this too, and they were the ones that recommended doing the repairs that we did to that little pop-out slide. We put some sandbags there to stop the flow of the water, and then we ended up putting in some, I guess, riprap, shot rock, whatever you want to call it, and some geotextile fabric to stabilize that. The dam held. There weren't any issues. Water never got over top of it. And then the river fell real quickly, but this made headlines and we had a whole lot of people come to take a look at it. You can see your state representative, Bill Wesley, was there and he's pictured with Corbett Caldwell, chief district engineer. And then Hal Rogers was there. He came to check it out along with several members of his staff. So this became a statewide priority because of the issues involving the dam safety and also that dam carrying Kentucky 15, such a vital artery for Eastern Kentucky. So we got started on public information involvement, trying to let the public know what was going on, in addition to starting plans to repair this. We had a lot of misinformation, which seems to be the case with everything that goes on these days. Somebody kept posting on District 10's Facebook page that the dam had breached, and the dam had not breached. And of course, that raised a lot of panic. People were just scared to death about that the dam had failed. And it hadn't, it held. We just had some water seeping through the highway fill portion of the embankment, but the dam did not fail. And the water that seeped through it did not really cause any issues with the lake level. We already had a project under development to widen Kentucky 15 4 lanes. Yeah, that would double the size of the dam. But in response to this 2021 flooding, we initiated a H&H study, hydrologic and hydraulic study, and an engineering study of the Kentucky 15 embankments and that Washington Avenue, Kentucky 1812 embankment that has the flat gates. We made some repairs to the flat gates. We put a new debris gate over top of the outlet channel. That was fabricated at our Breathitt County maintenance shop. Our guys did that, and they installed that to keep debris out of that drainage. And the studies that came back, they recommended short-term repairs as well as generated some information that will be helpful when we do the long-term Kentucky 15 widening project. After we got all this information from the H&H study and the engineering study, we wanted to do a public meeting since there was so much concern in Jackson, Breathitt County, and also downstream on the Kentucky River. There was so much concern about the project that we wanted to do a public meeting to explain what the H&H study reported and how we plan to address this. But if you remember, this was around January of this year, about 9-10 months after the flooding. And we thought COVID was over, or to a point where we could start doing these public meetings again. And then there was another big outbreak. So we decided that we needed to do the meeting online. So people could get the information and participate and ask questions without fear of exposing themselves to COVID. And we set up a web page. think I've gone too far here. We got a slide missing. That's what's going on here. But we did set up a web page. There it is. We did set up a web page for people to get information, sign up for the public meeting. Of course, in the meantime, anytime we had heavy rain in the forecast, people were just absolutely scared to death. We had one time where the National Weather Service office in Jackson was predicting, it didn't come to pass, thankfully. They predicted once in July of 2021 that we could get a major rise on the river. And we stationed personnel from Breathitt County Maintenance. We stationed them at the dam overnight to monitor the situation so they could take action if something happened. But we did not get the rain that was forecast, and that kind of ended up being a false alarm. We were glad of that. So we had planned to do the public meeting, but the COVID outbreak in the area made us look at other options, and we did the virtual public meeting. We didn't have any experience in doing a virtual public meeting to present information and take questions. So that's when we turned to C2. We knew that they had done some of this work in other districts, and they had the expertise in doing this. They could develop the meeting protocol, set everything up, conduct the meeting for us. So we turned to them and asked for their help under the statewide communications contract that KYTC has with them. And they were more than glad to help, and they set everything up for us. And we were really, really grateful for their assistance. So that's why I'm going to have Ed come up now and talk about what C2's role was in this, and what they did to facilitate our meeting and the communication efforts.
Thanks a lot, HB. I appreciate it. And just to kind of set the stage for when we came in, and I'm just going to back up a little bit. HB did a great job of sort of setting the stage, but when we came in, kind of what we were saying was we had a community where HB and the district had been dealing with a lot of public concern. I mean, basically what you had is you've got an aging infrastructure in a really urbanized area for that part of the state. You've got a leaking embankment above a populated area. So very complicated system of infrastructure in place to keep that water at bay. Very safe from an engineering standpoint, but from a public perception standpoint, you've got a lot of people seeing a dam leaking above their houses. So HB did a good job. He was dealing with a lot of public concern. He was sharing that information constantly. But you know, even as we talked about his background, HB's been the PIO there for quite a while, and it's a lot has changed in the time as far as what the public expects from the public information standpoint, and they've got one person to do it. So what they brought us in on was to basically be a resource for the district to help them out in a number of ways. I think when we came in, it was either late November or December of 2020, 2021, I'm sorry, 2021, when they brought us in to engage us in this. And we had the meeting in January of 2022. So we wanted to put on this public meeting. As HB said, we had either fortunately or unfortunately, we had gained a lot of experience through COVID in putting on virtual public meetings. You saw in the picture that when they came to visit the dam, they were wearing masks. There had been sort of heightened COVID in the area, and there was a need for us to do that online rather than in person, or at least try not to generate large crowds. So what they ideally brought us in was for that, but also to help bring some of those other resources that HB and the district wanted to use to tell that story. And that's really what we needed to do, was frame the story of what was the issue that the community was experiencing, but also what were the solutions that they were already developing to deal with that issue. So, you know, here on the screen, it talks about kind of some of the things that we utilize to tell that story. You know, the branding graphics, and I'll get into that a little bit more. We helped promote the public meeting. We also helped put together materials to help simplify and really explain what was going on there and how we were dealing with it in a way the public would understand, in a way community leaders would understand, so that eventually they feel comfortable in their homes. And ideally, that's what this is all about, is to make sure that they know that the state's doing the things that we need to do to keep them safe. So you know, those materials become very important in that. Gathering photo video, the state's got a lot of resources. They don't have a lot of photo video resources, the things that you need to do to show what is happening. Because at the end of the day, you can have a lot of words, but if people don't see it and kind of have a better understanding of, you know, the difference between a slip and a slide and a dam failure, we want to be able to show that so they have a little bit better understanding of that. And then the other thing that we did, and this has to do with what we do a lot in sort of telling the story, is we put together a project video to really tell it in a simplified way that was precise and accurate, but also easy to understand. So at the end of this, I'm going to show that video. It's about 3 minutes long, but if you stay with me, I think it'll probably explain some of the stuff that we're trying to explain in words, but also show you, what that looks like. So, maps and graphics, one of the things that we help do is develop a brand. Brands are great. They're not always necessary for a project. A lot of you work on projects that just have a name. It's the name that came on the RFP when it came out, and that's what you call the project. A lot of times we utilize branding for things that need public attention. We want people to see that, know what to call it. When the media is talking about it, they need to know what to call it. And it's not going to be a contract name. It's going to be something we have that is easy to understand. It's simple. It's something when you see that icon, when you see that logo, you know what we're talking about. It also gives the public a sense that the state is making this a priority. And that's absolutely something we wanted with this project, is to make sure that the community knew that this was a priority, not just for the district, but for the state. So, branding is something we utilize at Matt. You can see that we used an illustration that kind of mimicked the lake and river flow, so that people could see that and understand it. And then our maps were built to sort of mimic that as well. So some coordinated things that we did with maps and graphics to help really simplify that story and explain it. You can see the cross sections. We do those for a lot of different projects where we show the roadway, show some of the things that were there. Again, in the graphics, we were trying to do this not in a technical way. It's not something that an engineer, it's not a set of plans. It's not something an engineer would present, but it simplifies in a way that the public understands. And then as we, set up these other tactics, we make the engineers available to explain those things and tell them in greater detail for those who want that sense of understanding. And then, honestly, just illustrating as much as we can. Again, this is a complicated system of infrastructure. So even in that map at the top left, which is a smaller version of what HB showed earlier, it shows where the different pieces of infrastructure, so that it's easy for us to point to those, explain those in some of the auxiliary materials. So utilize a lot of those things. There's a lot more graphics that were involved in this. Some of those were sort of motion graphics to get attention. They're not as easy to illustrate here, but incorporate those in the video to show how some of this infrastructure works. So that's one component. And again, that's something that we were able to bring through the statewide contract, where we have some of those tools and resources that the district didn't have access to. The online public meeting, and this was at the heart of our engagement, what they wanted from us. And this was the ability to coordinate the meeting, promote the meeting, pull together all the materials that were needed to make it a successful meeting, and then honestly archive it so that the community that did not participate in the initial meeting was able to see it. So, we did the meeting, we recorded it, we put it on video and audio scripts, uploaded those to the website so that anybody who was not able to participate in that meeting saw exactly what was said, heard the questions that were answered during the virtual public meeting. One of the ways that in promoting that, we did a couple of different things. We obviously used what HB does all the time, and what is an important part of the public information process. We use the media. We promoted this, put information out in advance to let people know the public meeting was coming. Where it would be, we did the traditional advertising that we do for every public information meeting or hearing. We put it out on social media, so HB utilized the channels. HB is one of the leaders across KYTC in the use of social media. He's been active in it for a long time. He's gained a large following. So a lot of people in the district that are trying to get information about, things like public meetings, about what's going on with their infrastructure, they're looking to HB to give that. So we put together some, sort of snazzier graphics than what they probably would normally have access to really highlight the public meeting. We followed the brand again for that attention getting aspect. And then we promoted it over and over to make sure that people were aware that it was there and that they were invited to come ask questions. Adjacent to this, we also sent letters to, I think, over about 200 property owners with potential impacts. So, we made sure they were aware of it, that they knew how to get to the website to get the information, that the meeting was happening, that they were invited to participate in, and then where to go for questions. One of the things with the public meetings we've done, I think since COVID started, we've done well over a dozen public meetings, public hearings for transportation and non-transportation clients. It's been something that we were forced into quickly. As soon as COVID happened and we started having to cancel public meetings, we went ahead and invested quickly into, sort of the tools that were needed to have those. We knew that your work wasn't going to stop just because COVID said we can't get together in large groups. So we had to find a way to do that. So just like a lot of, other states, a lot of related organizations, we started learning how to do that. We had typically used online tools like WebEx and things like that to have project meetings and those type of things, but not really in a public facing way and with large groups. So, we started gaining that experience. But one thing that we learned through that is online public meetings cannot replace in-person face-to-face interactions. We know that through COVID, we weren't able to do that in large groups. It was not good practice to have 500 people in a gymnasium like we might have at a normal public meeting, but we could bring them together. They could get the message, everybody at the same time. They could see the graphics and hear from the experts who could explain this and answer their questions. But we also wanted to make sure access was available to those who were not able to attend those, that didn't have the technology. We're in rural Southeast Kentucky. There is a lot of technology available, but it's not always as reliable as it might be in other parts of the state. So making sure that they not only could participate in the meeting, but they could see it afterwards, that if they wanted to come talk to the district, they could make appointments to do that. So we had, over a dozen people, I think, that took advantage of coming to the district afterwards to see the materials in person, talk to the engineers and the leaders there about what was happening so that they'd have a better understanding. And at the end of the day, that's what we're hoping for, is to give the public a better understanding of this project. Meeting materials, again, this is just something that we have access to that probably most of the districts don't have regular access to, is graphic designers. We have a large graphic design team that helps us on different projects. So that's everything from PowerPoints to handouts to graphic elements to better explain it. And what we find a lot of times is the most important part of this is simplifying almost everything that you all are doing from an engineering standpoint, being accurate and precise about what we're showing the public and explaining to the public, but doing it in a way that's much more vivid than the AASHTO manual. We obviously can't drill that all down for everybody, but helping people understand what are these design elements, what are these solutions, to simplify those, but then again, give them that opportunity to dig down if they want to find out more about what we're doing. So we use the phrase a lot, simplify the complex. That's one of the things that through our experience working on a lot of these major projects that I think that we're able to do. And then again, bright and engaging, that's something you always want to focus on. So I mentioned video, and before I start that, I'll tell you a little bit about that. For this project, because it was so complicated, and we knew that we had this public forum where we were going to have a chance to not just have the live online meeting, but also have the ability to put all of this information on websites, to utilize QR codes on materials to send people directly to the website to see different things. We wanted to make sure that everyone heard and saw the same things. So, replicating this live with those in-person meetings at the district, with people that were coming maybe outside the meeting, but coming to the district website to learn more about the project. We wanted to make sure we simplified it as well as we could and let them know, again, what we were trying to do is build confidence in the community that solutions were in place, that we understood the problem, solutions were in place, and that they were safe. So we put together this video. I think what you'll find here is this may explain the project and the solutions maybe better than we even have so far. So anything that you might be confused about, I think we'll answer here in terms of what was going on and how we were dealing with it. So I'll play that for you, and then we'll open up for questions.
Panbowl Lake is a geographic feature in Breathitt County that is part of what makes the city of Jackson unique. The area around the man-made lake includes a neighborhood, hospital, school, businesses, and the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet's District 10 office. Panbowl Lake used to be part of the North Fork of the Kentucky River, but that changed in the 1960s with the construction of Kentucky Highway 15.
When the road was built, the lake was impounded through a series of 3 embankments that served as dams, 2 of them on Kentucky 15, 1 of them on Washington Avenue.
The highway separates Panbowl from the river at the west embankment. There is a spillway riser near the east embankment, which leads to an outlet water channel that runs parallel to Kentucky 15 and under Washington Avenue by way of a culvert and flap gate. The outlet is necessary when water levels on the lake go above a normal elevation of 713 feet.
There's a vertical pipe that connects to a horizontal concrete box culvert that runs underneath Kentucky 15 and channels the water into the old riverbed channel between Kentucky 15 and Main Street, and then through the gate system, Washington Avenue, and then into the main channel of the Kentucky River North Fork as it exists now.
In late February 2021, extensive rainfall caused historic flooding in eastern Kentucky. The North Fork of the Kentucky River crested at just over 39 feet in Jackson, the 10th worst flood in recorded history for this community. Jackson had not experienced flooding this severe since 1984. Not only was the river level high, Panbowl Lake reached an elevation of nearly 729 feet, about 16 feet above normal. Water from the river began seeping through the west embankment, causing a stability issue for the slope.
And it appeared that maybe some water was flowing back from the river back into the lake, because you had the rushing floodwaters from the river trying to make that bend there where the cut through had been done up against the embankment.
Kentucky Transportation Cabinet personnel responded quickly to the west embankment slip, placing sandbags and later geotextile fabric and rock to prevent further erosion. Ultimately, the dam did not breach and Kentucky 15 remained open to traffic. Since that historic flooding event, KYTC initiated an engineering study to evaluate the condition of the embankments and identify possible improvements. There is also a plan to widen both Kentucky 15 and Washington Avenue, so the engineering report will be used to help inform the design of that project.
What we've tried to do is look at some short-term solutions that can be incorporated into the longer-term permanent widening project that will be hopefully coming along in a few years.
KYTC has already replaced the debris gate over the east embankment riser and cleared out vegetation as recommended by the study. With available funding, the next improvement will be a driven sheet pile wall installed at the west embankment to create a more impervious cutoff from the river. Panbowl Lake remains a floodplain, but these improvements will help prevent future lakeside flooding and maintain the structural integrity of the Kentucky 15 dam.
one thing we want to do here is to ensure not only the safety of the residents that live along the lake, but we have to ensure that Kentucky 15 remains a viable highway. It's a major artery from southeast Kentucky to central Kentucky.
And actually, before we jump into questions, I'm gonna let HB give you just a brief update. We got some positive news recently about this project.
Like I said a little earlier, we had planned this presentation before the flooding that we had in July, and then last month, and our recovery efforts are still ongoing. It was a bit ironic. The day of the flooding, we advertised for bids on that dam stabilization project. I know it was referred to as a sheet pile wall. That may not be what they do. They're calling it, I forget the exact term that they're using now, cutoff wall, I think. But the day that we had the flooding, they had advertised for bids on that. And the bids were opened on August 18th. And it looked like that, I mean, it was very apparent that we would have a winning bid. We had two bids, and one of them was beneath the estimate. One of them was significantly higher than the estimate. So it looked like we were going to have a winning bid. And that weekend, I mean, I think that was on a Thursday. And then that weekend, there was a social media post in Breathitt County by a very well-known local resident that went viral saying the state's doing nothing, the state's doing nothing. And we just had this huge flood, and after the flood we had 18 months ago, and nothing's happened. And of course, it gets the community riled up. Everybody gets worked up about it. I understand the people that live in that lake watershed. The mayor of Jackson lives over there. The emergency management director for Breathitt County lives over there on Lakeside. So they're obviously going to be concerned about it. You know, it didn't help that we had that going on, but a few days later, we were able to announce that, yes, we had awarded the contract. That construction will probably start this month. And I think the people in Jackson, especially those that live in the lakes watershed, they really feel much better that we have actually looked at this and found a solution, and we're going to take a lot of the worries off of it. And now, if anybody has any questions, Patty says, got 2 minutes.
I don't have any.
Okay, our project manager is here. So I said, we're going to deflect, Eric's shaking his head. We're going to deflect any questions that Ed or I can't answer. We'll deflect those to Eric. All righty then.
Close this out real quick.
All right.